Be different or be dead. That's the message of Roy Osing, my guest today, a gentleman of 40 years of experience who was an integral leader in building a $1 billion company, billion with a B. He's also written 7 books, his latest just released, and he helps hundreds of entrepreneurs across the world improve their business, grow their top line, and improve their bottom line. Most importantly, you're going to find Roy to be one authentic and really committed guy. He speaks with passion. He says it like it is. So enjoy this one. Get out the notepad, because I found myself taking notes here in the podcast studio with some of the things he said. It was that good. Roy is a former president, CMO, and entrepreneur with over 40 years of successful executive leadership experience in almost every aspect of business. As president of a major data and internet company, his leadership in audacious, unheard-of ways, and we're going to talk about that later, took the company from its early stage to over $1 billion in annual sales. He is devoted to inspiring leaders, entrepreneurs, and organizations to stand apart from the average, boring crowd and achieve their true potential. He is a resolute blogger, keen content marketer, dedicated teacher, and mentor to young professionals. As an accomplished business advisor, he's the author of the no-nonsense book series, Be Different or Be Dead. I love that. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. So without further ado, Roy, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Hey, Roger. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is going to be a wonderful conversation. Just doing the research on your background and your book series, and then just a few minutes we spent before we hit record here. You've got a lot to share with our audience. So, if you could, just so we all have the same baseline, can you share a little bit about your background? Because you had some of these billion-dollar runs with companies, and obviously 7-time author. But talk to us about really what that genesis was. Like, what did you start doing, and then how did that progress?
Well, really quite a boring past, to be honest with you. I was born and raised in a small little place in British Columbia, Canada, and had a wonderful childhood there, living in the outdoors with my parents and skiing. I learned to ski when I was 3, so I've got all sorts of that going on. And like most kids, I went to university and got a degree in math, which quite frankly I've never used. Never solved a business problem with a differential equation before. I got that, and I joined a telephone company when I got out of school. And those were the days where, it was all a monopoly. And so we were order takers, and, we didn't do marketing. That, we were kind of regulated, etc. And it was a pretty stable business. And then, of course, along came, and I did various things. I'm kind of like one of these guys that strategically meandered through an organization around and up. That's kind of what I did, right?
Sure.
Because I love to learn things, right? But one of the things I learned very early was that being different in a way that people cared about was really the secret to, first of all, getting people to notice what you're doing and the value that you're adding and creating. And secondly, to actually being successful in that. So I started that whole be different or be dead thing, didn't call it that, right? I've had to reach back and tag it very, very young as I went through my career. And the interesting thing was, every problem that I was given, that I successfully did, it was all about, how can I approach this differently? How can I do this in a way that other people don't? How can I break from tradition? How can I disrupt the line of continuity that I'm in the middle of? And it was just this natural drive that I think I got from my mother, by the way. It's just like she was that kind of a woman. And so my whole career was based doing that. And then finally, because of the diversity I had and the achievements I was fortunate enough to realize, I was asked to take over this startup in the days when the monopoly telephone company was going into a competitive world. And I was asked to create this competitive powerhouse to unleash the power of the internet in those days. And so I took that company and created a team, and I get goosebumps when I think about it, because we didn't start out, right, with the objective of creating $1 billion worth of annual revenue. We started out saying, all right, how can we harness this puppy and do something absolutely wonderful for people, and we'll see where it goes. And that's kind of the genesis as well of these crazy, audacious ways that you mentioned earlier. That's where these things came from. And so, and I left that company in 2002, decided that I was getting a bit tired, and I moved on. And so that led me to basically pay my learnings forward. And so the reason we're having this conversation is I want to talk to people about what worked for me in an entrepreneurial way and what can work for them if they chose that journey. So I'm delighted to be here for that. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what this show's about. It's about helping people that are currently in business and want to scale and get better and grow. It's helping people who are on the fence about entrepreneurship. Do I make the jump? Do I go? Whether that's, starting your own business, buying a franchise, joining a very, very small team. These are big decisions in life, and our guests serve the audience that way. So you've written 7 books, and we're going to talk about your most recent one, but they all are surrounded by the mindset of be different or be dead, as you just earlier said. Can you explain to us what that means? What that means to you? Be different or be dead.
Yeah, it simply says if you're not different, okay, in a competitive world, and that competitive world can be in business, it can be about your career, it can be about your personal life. And so actually the application of these principles is so cool because it applies to everything in life, really.
Yeah.
But the notion is, if you're not different in a way that other people care about, you're dead, or you will be soon, okay? And just look at the business environment. How many companies have gone out of business because they've been basically the same as everybody else? And what happens with that is that you end up competing on price. That's a bad place to be. You compete on price, you're a commodity, profit margin squeeze, bang, you're toast. Okay, and so that is the ultimate consequence I use in the title of not being different, is that you, and of course it's a metaphor, you will die, okay, and you will hurt people like employees and shareholders, etc. So the whole objective behind this is to explore ways and share the different things that I was able to do in business and in my career. I applied it to my career to achieve things that, quite frankly, you wouldn't have expected that you would be able to achieve. And so differentiation today, just to finish up on this, is, in my opinion, is being done poorly. Okay, like how many times have you heard people or organizations claim we're better, we're the best, we're number one, we're market leaders? I call that claptrap and aspirational and narcissistic thinking, quite frankly, because it's your view of you. That's not what competitive advantage claims are all about. It's about how can you serve other people in a way they care about. It's not about what you think of you. And so when you say I'm better, thank you, Mr. Narcissist, because that's exactly what everybody else is saying. And all you've really done, right, is increase the herd of sameness by 1. And so it's exactly the antithesis, okay, of what is needed. And so part of my journey is to try and get people hooked on, because I have a solution to this, which we can talk about. It's a simple little solution. Get them out of this horrible mindset of superlatives and comparatives like best and better into something that customers will actually appreciate, because they don't appreciate your dishonesty when you claim you're the best. Because first of all, I don't know what that means. I don't know who actually defines best. Do you? I mean, everybody's got their own view. The only view that's important, Roger, is the view of the person you're trying to serve. And if you don't understand what turns them, okay, into raving fans, then, well, you're going to stay in the wonderful herd of warm narcissism that unfortunately we have way too much today.
Yeah. I would add on that, because you said, the profits will be squeezed. I don't think, my opinion is that profit is not a normal state of operation. That in a capitalistic society, in a free market society that is allowed to be a free market society without regulation, profit is not the norm. Because things become commoditized, the profit gets squeezed, people start competing on price. If it is all sameness, then the profit is squeezed out to where the few companies that remain can barely make it. They're literally just keeping the lights on. Everyone else, goes out. It's only those companies that reimagine, reiterate their business on that S curve, right? And when it gets to the top, they know they've got to make another change to keep going. Because profit is not a normal, and everybody expects that when they open a business. Like, well, yeah, I'm going to be good, and I'm going to be profitable. Good gets you break even at best. And I would love to hear your comments on on that?
Yeah, well, good makes you unbelievably boring and will put me to sleep. To be perfectly honest, you
Yeah.
know about me already in the commentary I've given you so far. But look at
Yeah.
success in business, you're right, isn't about the margins. Okay, you have to earn the margins by increasing your top line in an unbelievable way. And so
Yep.
it's all about focusing on the top line. Now, why do I say that? First of all, I can manipulate an income statement until the cows come home and give you whatever operating margins, whatever net income you want. I can do that. What I can't do is I cannot orchestrate and architect the top line, because that is an expression of how customers feel about the value you're creating. You can't mask that. You can't run from that. You can't hide from that. And so, I mean, it's obvious to me, but it's quite incredible that this isn't being taught, by the way, except in Be Different or Be Dead. So we just declare that. And the only reason I say that is it works. I mean, if you're mindly focused on the top line, you're looking at the right things. You're trying to figure out, what kind of value proposition do I have that's unique? If that top line falters, I guarantee you it's because you're not differentiating yourself right. Simple stuff. And so it gets us back to that conversation. How do I do that in a way that I'm not claiming better, best, blah, 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 right?
Yep.
And so, yes, absolutely, the planning process that I've had to create, which is really based around execution that I use to build this business, is all top line focused. It is totally focused on top line, but it's not a 5-year plan, okay? It's a 24-month plan. 5-year plans never show up. We all know that. And yet, why do we do them? I'll tell you why. To escape the need to execute today, we have a 5-year plan, because we can put that off into year 4, right? Yeah, no, we can't, because by then we're dead. We're done, right? So my process is to say, let's get a growth scheme in place, right, for the next 24 months. So my planning period is 24 periods of 30 days. And the reason I talk about it that way is because one of the key planks of being an audacious leader is focusing on execution, not the efficacy of the plan, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm a just about right planning guy. I don't believe in trying to perfect imperfection. And yet the world seems to want to do that. So, stay focused on the top line, you guys. The bottom line will take care of itself. You can use the textbook to engineer to the bottom line, but you cannot use a textbook to take your top line where you need to go. There's a lot of other things you need to learn. Stay tuned.
Man, it's funny. I was reading a book last night, and I just love to read. And the mantra in this book is, don't set a goal of, I want to be worth $50 million by the time I'm 50 years old, whatever the thing is. Set a goal of, I want recurring revenue of $5,000 a month within 90 days. Like that, you can go achieve, and you have to get busy today to do that, to work towards that 50 million. But you're right. People put these ginormous, I'm going to have a jet and a Lambo and all this stuff, but it's so far in the future. Tonight, I'm going to the club. No, that's not how this works.
No,
that's not how this works.
It's a reward of doing the right things right in the short run. Like I'm a game plan dude. That's what allowed us to do what we had to do. Literally, we managed the business in 30-day periods. We understood exactly what was going on, and we moved and we shook based on those results. And by successive iterations of 30-day successes, guess what we were able to do? We got $1 billion. Okay, where everybody else is saying, Roy, what are you doing? I mean, traditional planning says you need that. Don't you have a vision? And I said, yep, we're going to head just about west. We're going to head west. That's what we're going to do. That's my vision. Because to be able to predict with precision where I'm going to end up is freaking crazy. And while you're trying to figure that out, guess what you're not doing? You're not doing anything. You're not executing in the marketplace. You're not learning from execution. So my view has always been really simple. I'm going to get the plan just about right, because I know you can't perfect imperfection, and yet the textbooks tell us to do that. Help. Give me a break. And I'm going to start executing, learning, and adjusting on the way. And so if I'm sitting in New York, I'm going to head slightly west, and I'll figure out whether I really should have been thinking about Vancouver or Los Angeles or San Francisco. But the reality is, when I started the journey, I didn't know. The journey is complex. It's full of chaos and body blows that you can't predict. Why on earth would I take another 3 months and $25 million to pay somebody to try and perfect imperfection. Absolute nonsense. And for you entrepreneurs out there, do not listen to people who promulgate that sort of thinking, okay? Because all they're doing is they're regurgitating what they've read in a textbook, as opposed to actually building something and a journey that people have just like given themselves emotionally to. That's what you want as an entrepreneurial leader, is to create that sort of passion in your vision and your journey that will lead you to success. Trust me, it does. You don't need a 5-year plan. That will simply tie you down.
Yeah. Man, that's like provocative.
Yeah, I know.
I've ordered your latest book, Audacious, Unheard-Of Ways. I was hoping to have it before this podcast, but I don't, but I can't wait to get it. I want to dive into it. What should I expect in your most recent book?
Well, you could expect to have fun reading some real simple things. You can expect that the things are so simple, you'll go, huh, can that really work? You can expect a point of view that is completely disruptive to traditional thought, that is provocative. I mean, look at my voice, my tone of voice, my way of writing, my way of talking about this is meant to be provocative. And that's because the inertia associated with moving out of the momentum of the past is so strong that I literally got to take somebody by the throat and whack them on the side of the head to get their attention. Now, I've tried to keep that voice in written form, and it's quite hard.
I'm looking forward to it.
And not only that, my publisher says, Roy, you can't say that. I have to tell you a funny story. My original book that I wrote in 2009, because I've been at this a long time, it was called Be Different or Be Dead, your strategy survival guide. And I had to fire 5 editors because they wanted to be English 101 majors and take my content and mold it and make it comply to traditional English teaching principles. I'm not that kind of a guy. In fact, when I first read the manuscript coming back to me, I went, who wrote this? It was not Roy. So anyway, 5 later, I reached a compromise with the publisher is I wrote most of it. I mean, syntactical redundancy issues, spelling mistakes, a few, but it's real. And so what you will find when you read this is you will discover outlandish language, stuff that you've never heard of before. But trust me, just stay with it and trust it, because I'm not operating and I'm not doing this from an academic platform. I'm giving you and sharing you this information from somebody who suffered the pain and agony of pushing stuff rope uphill and actually lit fires in thousands of people to get $1 billion in annual sales. You can trust it. Okay. And anybody that says it doesn't work simply A, hasn't read it, or B, is so committed and invested in academic conformity that you'll never get them to move. So you need to move on and get new friends who want to be different. One last point I want to say to you about be different is a lot of people misunderstand me when I say you need to be different, because they think it's like something physically or so forth. And let me just say this. It's so important to understand where I'm coming from on this. Being different is not about the color of your hair. It's not about your pronouns. It's not about your sexual preferences. And it sure as hell isn't about the color of your skin. Being different is to find a way to serve what other people crave in a way that's different from everybody else. And so the be different mindset, Roger, is a servant mindset. I want to serve the people who represent economic opportunity to me in a way that nobody else does. I want to capture their imagination. I want to tell them a story that will convince them to come with me and only me and nobody else. And so there's the competitive advantage piece, right? Yeah. That's the part of the story. So please, you guys, this isn't about, gimmicks and fancy stuff. This Be Different journey is so strategic, okay, and is so serving in its ideology. And you know what? This has evolved in my head, actually, while I'm doing this, while I'm having conversations with guys like you, right? Because the questions I get back is, well, okay, if I do this slick thing, I'll be different. I go, no. This is a way of life. This is a philosophy. This is about serving people in a way that they care about. So that whole thing, I've tried to maintain that thread through the whole book. And I repeat it because I understand that people learn in different ways. And so I actually admit in the introduction to the book that they can expect some strategic repetition in the book. I'm going to say be different or be dead a few times. I'm going to talk about differentiation several times. I'm going to talk about cravings that marketers should be paying attention to a lot. And that's just because I want to keep banging away at it. Because again, it's that inertia, Roger, that's so strong and so hard to break. And so I hope that the other part of it is you can pick and choose, right? If you're interested, because it's built around functions. So it's built around strategy and customer service and careers. So you can dive into that if you're in marketing and say, well, what is be different or be dead? What does Roy mean to marketing when he talks that way? Or you can go to business planning. And so I tried to categorize it, I guess, that way in a traditional sense to make it easier for people. And at the end of the day, I hope they can say, wow, I didn't expect that. That's freaking awesome.
That's good. Yeah. And I love that you repeat, like, we need to be reminded more than we need to be educated. So the fact that you've hit that many times. So what would you say are the four, I think in your book, you outlined the four main elements of audacious leadership. What are those four main elements of audacious leadership?
And the first one is, we've just been talking about it, is you have to be different running through your veins. Mm-hmm. You have to wake up in the morning saying, how am I going to approach the problem I've got in a way that nobody else does? How am I going to be the only one that does what I do? Okay, and the whole notion of differentiation, for me, I had to create a tool, and it's called the only statement. And it was made to actually get differentiation meaningful at a granular level. So I could say to a customer, I want you to you should choose me because I'm the only one who. And so the only statement actually has been a very, very successful part of my work. And I work with businesses who don't think they're special, right? Because being the only one is sort of, you're saying you're special in something. Some people are uncomfortable with saying that. They think it's arrogant. And I say, no, it's not. You need to be comfortable with. I'll tell you what's arrogant. When you tell me you're the best, that's arrogant, right? Being the only one that does what you do is something that you have to prove. And yet it has to be relevant and compelling and so forth. And so the first piece of audacious leadership is all about figure it out. And for you entrepreneurs out there, if you haven't figured this out, stop spending money. I mean, I deal with so many CEOs who are starting their own business. And what they are, Roger, is they have a product idea, right, that is pretty cool and sexy from a technology point of view, and they want to go to market. When I ask them the question, how are you different? Okay, in a way that makes sense for your potential customers and everybody else, they stumble. And I say, okay, that's all right. Do me a favor, though. Stop spending cash, okay? Because all you're going to be doing is you're going to take yourself into the cash spiral quickly, and you're going to be done. Take a step back. Let's work through this thing. So the only statement has been actually probably one of the most popular ideas of the book because it is so practical and it's so straightforward. I won't say easy, but it's straightforward to develop. So the first piece of audacious, you need to be different. The second piece is put the plan down. We talked a little bit about this. It's all about execution. It's not about the brilliance of your plan. It's not about your plan that captures the essence of academia in terms of strategic planning 101, right? It's about getting the plan just about right and executing it and learning from execution. So it's like a do loop, right? It's plan, execute, learn, adjust, execute, learn, adjust. And I've written an awful lot about this whole notion called just about right planning. And to me, long-term planning is what am I going to do on Friday, right? And I applied that same notion to business. And the beauty of that is you inch your way forward, okay? Not in a theoretical perspective, but in a way that people believe in. And leadership is all about getting people to believe, okay, that they can succeed and to actually see them, take a deep breath and actually be proud of their accomplishments is all about leaders capturing them through the essence of execution. The third piece, and people talk about this, but not quite the way I do, and I call it serving leadership. Other people talk servant leadership, which is kind of, morphed into sort of a cliche of a leadership style. And I don't look at it that at all. I'm the leadership by serving around guy. Now, Tom Peters 100 years ago talked about management by wandering around. And unfortunately, Tom didn't take it far enough. Okay, so I've taken that concept. Well, it's not about wandering and observing. It's about serving, listening, and helping. And so my mantra was, how can I help, Roger? Okay, look at what's going on with you, what's preventing you from doing what you know is important to get the job done, etc. Some people think that's a leadership style. It's not. It's actually a strategic initiative. Because my logic is, if I can get you, if your job can be easier for you to do, you're going to execute better. And guess what happens to the business? The performance level goes up. So this is all driven by the need to perform at an unbelievable level. And so I would spend, incredible amounts of my time embedded with folks actually doing the job. I'm a frontline guy. I'm a frontline leader. Always have been. Why? Because they know how to run the business. All I need to do is listen to them and help them. And so the notion of serving leadership is huge for if somebody wants to go down this audacious path. But it's a different twist, and there's a whole lot of material that I've created around there to help. The last piece that I believe is important is all about the fact that delegation is not always the right thing to do. I'm a believer in strategic micromanagement, and I've created that term very specifically. Okay, I call it fingerprint leadership. There is a role for doing it yourself, guys. There is way too much delegation in businesses today. This is the point where it's abdication of a leader's responsibility. So what do I mean by fingerprint leadership? What I mean is there are certain strategic acts, right, that can only be performed by the leader, that should never be delegated. One is simply convincing people to come on the journey. And how many times have you heard a CEO or president of the company say, I'm going to delegate that to my guys in BD. I'm going to delegate the communication of the strategic plan to somebody else, and they can go out. But come on, that's abdicating. That's abdicating your responsibility. So that's an example. There are other things. We had this amazing customer service strategy built around creating gas-worthy experiences and moments for customers, right? I took it on personally to help architect the customer moment in this business. I didn't delegate it to people who were customer service experts. That's not what I wanted. I wanted a moment crafted, right? An engagement crafted with a customer that would deliver gas-worthiness. And I was the only one could take that message because it was running through me. It wasn't running through anybody else yet, other than intellectually, right? And of course, we all know the mind doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't, right? The heart and soul and the guts and everything else does. And so I got myself totally involved in that. So you want to be an audacious leader. You have to be different. You have to have execution as your mantra. You have to be able to lead by serving around and ask, how can I help? And you have to strategically micromanage the important things to deliver performance behind your strategic plan.
Hey everyone, as you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. I would love for you to share your feelings on working on the business versus working in the business. And let me just caveat that with the whole world seems to be about not being in their business. And, I'm in Greece after getting off my private jet and get on my Lambo, and I'm doing all my work from my laptop, but I'm never there because it all runs itself because I work on the business, which I call BS on. and I think we're probably going to be aligned on this, but I would love to know your definition of working on the business versus working in the business, because it is such a misunderstood concept, I think, in our society.
Yeah, I mean, working in the business, my observation is, and my experience has been, it's largely a tactically driven exercise. Okay, so people working on the business will manage emails. Okay, they'll see the latest AI application and they'll get busy trying to implement that in their business. Or they'll see a pretty cool post on TikTok and they'll go and review their social media strategy. Okay, all kind of like micro stuff. The point that's missing is what working on the business really means. Working on your business is all about defining a strategy that you can then use to guide all those tactical activities. So most people don't look to context. I am the most context-driven guy. When I lock and load on a strategy, I create line of sight between that strategy and every person in the organization. And the business was literally 8,000 or 9,000 people, okay, that I had. This was not an easy task.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is if you don't have a strategy that's lined up, then dysfunction sets in because everybody has to invent what that strategy means to them, right? Everybody has a different idea. And so line of sight, that's another aspect of an audacious leader, by the way, is they help create line of sight for employees. But it starts with the strategy. And so I say to businesses who always tell me I don't have time to work on it, Roy, I'm so busy working in it. And I say, look, I can help you in 48 hours because the process that I created to help me in my business, literally, and I've been doing this for so long with small business particularly, we literally can get this done in 48 hours. We can create a growth strategy for your business with a differentiation claim that actually makes sense. And you're actually executing in the 49th hour. Can you give me 48 hours? What's more important, right? And so we take a step back. We do that. We get that to anchor then everything that they do working in their business. Okay, so for me, what's missing in generally, I think in business, is the willingness to take the step back and create context for their activities. It's too tactically driven, and the problem with tactics is you never know what end you're serving. All you're doing is serving a narrative of the day that says, well, if you're not using AI, man, you suck. Okay? You mean, stay up with us, dude. You got to use AI. I had a podcast yesterday with just a wonderful lady who was talking about the author revolution. And we got into AI because it's content related. And she was quite surprised for about 13 seconds over the fact that I actually despise the use of AI as a content creation tool. Why? You should know by now, because I believe in being different. I believe in authenticity. Okay, how can you be authentic? Okay, when you have a crawler aggregating content and you claim that it's you. It's somebody else doing you, Roger. It's not you doing you. You need to do you, and you can't use it through some of those tools. See, I've never had any problems with facing those tools because I know who I am. I have a context, and that's missing. Okay, it's missing in people's lives. It's missing in their careers. And to the point that you just raised, it's missing in business who use tactics as a way to excuse themselves for not having a context to play in. You need a box. You just need a box. And it doesn't have to be big and complicated. Trust me, I've created this out of practicality, not out of theory, and it works so well.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. It's funny about AI. I published a book in January, and I think second page, third page in, I made a statement. I felt it was very important that there was no use of ChatGPT, AI, or ghostwriting services. You know, that because that feels like cheating to me for a book. It just feels like absolute cheating when somebody
totally
does
is
that.
Cheating, and good for you to. You know, how sad is it though that you have to declare that you didn't use it? How freaking sad is that, Roger? Like that's the definition of the expectation is you're inauthentic, right? And so now you have to prove that you're not. Come on, dude.
That's good.
I'm depressed.
I love it. I love it. All right. So differentiation, and man, I'm I feel like I'm growing exponentially the older I get. Hopefully that's wisdom, right? We accumulate wisdom and a lot of gray hair, but I am so aligned with that, and I'm not placating you. Like, I truly, in my heart and soul, agree with what you're saying around differentiation and around, and the only person that determines that is the customer, not you, the customer. So if you're in a business, if we have listeners that are in a business, I'm just going to make something up. They have a dry cleaning business, or they have a flower shop, or they have, a fitness business, whatever it is. What is the first step? Like, if there is it, what are the first 2 or 3 things that you would coach and counsel that business on starting to differentiate their service?
Yeah, and so I'm going to give you Roy's context answer, because I am not going to answer the question, how do you build an only statement, without having you do the work to earn the right to create that only statement. So if you haven't built the context first, then I don't even want to give you any advice, because it will be the wrong advice. And so let me take you a step back. The context I'm talking about, for everybody listening, it's really simple. I have created a 3-step process, which I call strategic game planning. And it's a process that says, if you can answer 3 questions, then you basically have your game plan. Now, it's called game plan because I want the emphasis on what? Execution, right? Game plans get executed, right? 5-year plans create a dusty closet. All right, let's face it. So the first question is, how big do you want to be? To our conversation earlier, how big do you want to be says, how much top-line revenue growth do you want in the next 24 months? So if you're at $1 million top line today, where do you want to be in 24 months? Do you want to be at 2 million? Do you want to be at 5 million? Do you want to be at 10 million? The reason I start with that is that answer to that question basically describes the character of the strategy, because, and most planning processes end up with revenues at the end, right? And they don't like the number, so they change the number and they change the assumptions without changing the strategy.
Sure.
So I figured that out. So I get the kids off the street. First thing we do is, how big do you want to be in 24 months, right? And that's an interesting exercise, because it's not based on, and some people will say, well, okay, we need to do a linear regression analysis and a trend line, evaluation to find out. I said, no, it's about your heart. Where do you want this business to be? Because I happen to believe that how big and growth is the driver of innovation. Because if you set up a 10% growth objective, you probably could get there in a walk in a park. It's no incentive to innovate. But if you set a 50% growth objective on the top line, you're not going to get there by doing what? By doing things the way you've always done them. You're going to have to be different. You're going to have to, so it's a source of innovation. So that's the first thing. So we get that done. And that's just, people sweat, they perspire. It's nervous. The CEO's going crazy. My God, what have I just committed to? Anyways, it's lots of fun. Second piece says, who do you intend to serve? That's a question about where you're going to get the money. Okay, which customer groups do you intend to target that have the latent potential in demand to give you that how big? And so if you're looking for 5 million, the question is, okay, let's get as few customer groups as we can that we think can give us the $5 million growth, right? This is not a mass market issue. And you entrepreneurs, you're not in the mass market game. I'm going to show you how not to be in the mass market clumsy game. And that's what it is, right? If you're not making numbers, it's because you're broadening yourself. And so who are we going to serve? Bang. So the idea is, my nirvana for me, Roger, would be define one customer group that I can get my growth out of. Now we know that that's probably not possible. So I say, okay, give me 2. Okay, all right, give me 3. So I keep the pressure on, because we have limited resources. We don't have the time and money to chase a bunch of stuff. So let's get as few customer target groups as we can that we think have got the capability to deliver the how big growth revenue. And then we take a deep dive. So I'm getting closer to your question about the only statement. So trust me. We do a deep dive in each of those customer groups. And guess what we ask them? We ask, what do they crave? We don't ask what do they need, because they basically got their needs satisfied anyways. And if you want to play that game, you're going to be commodity and blah, blah, blah. We don't want. Cravings is a space that, first of all, has no competition. Nobody else plays in the craving space. And the second thing is, it's not price sensitive, Roger. So I can charge premium prices with no competition if I can figure out what those customers crave. And this is a huge piece of the work. In fact, I'm doing a masterclass workshop on this next week, and people just say, help me through this, help me through this. They think I'm going to give them tactics. No, I'm giving them strategy, and they will get to the only, just like we're doing now. And so, okay, we've answered those first two questions. The third question says, how are you going to compete and win? So this is all about differentiation, but it's not differentiation in the way most people feel. It's how are you going to be different in a way that the who cares about relative to the cravings we've just discovered. So you follow me? This is about going back into the work we just did around the who and said, we understand what they crave. How are we going to satisfy those cravings in a way nobody else does? And the objective is to be the only one who does it. Okay? And so the way this comes together as a strategy is that the answers to those questions become the strategy. Okay? So it could say something like, we intend to grow the business by $25 million by January 1st, 2025. We intend to serve the following 3 market segments or customer groups to do it. And the third says we will compete, and we intend to compete and win by being the only ones who. Okay. And so when you pull it all together, now you can see that the only statement that you've created has strategic relevance because it's born from the context you've created. Let me give you an example that may help. I was asked to do some business with a company in Eastern Canada that actually thought that they were selling boats to boat dealers. And the CEO gave me a call and says, Roy, you got to help me. I'm just not getting the growth I want. So I took him through the process, right? Yeah. And he wanted to get to differentiation. I wouldn't let him. So we took him through the process. We got to the point where we were thinking about the only statement, and he said, we sell boats. I mean, how can we differentiate boat selling? And I said, well, maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question should be, what would blow the boat dealers away, okay, if you were the only one who could satisfy that craving? I said, let me rephrase it. What keeps the boat dealers up at night? What are they worried about all the time? Okay. And after a lot of discussion, it came through, well, they're really concerned about keeping their business alive. They need to grow their business. Okay. So it's a business problem they've got. And I said, okay, why don't we play into that? Can you do that? Of course, we'll build it around, I use the word, we'll anchor it around your boats. Probably not.
Perfect. It's perfect.
And they said, well, yeah. I said, first of all, would you be the only one in the boat area if doing this, if you could do that sort of thing? And they said, yes. So I said, so this is what we came up with. And it just absolutely just took their breaths away. They went from selling boats to being the only complete service provider committed to delivering solutions to grow a boat dealer's business. They were not no longer in selling boats to dealers. The whole context of engagement changed. So when they approached the dealer, it was about, let me help you grow your business. Okay, what? And as soon as they said that, the boat dealer, I get goosebumps thinking about the boat dealer's eyes, pupils dilated. It was almost to say, how did you know, right? Yeah. How did you know that's what I crave? And so what I try and do with organizations around this is it may not be obvious what your only statement is. Okay, but let's play with reframing what you do. I'm working with another, we call it a strata, it's a lawn and garden company up here who thought they were in the lawn cutting business. They now have an only statement that says they deliver tailored solutions to strata developments, which are homeowners associations up here. Mm-hmm. We only serve strata companies. They're in the property development business, not the lawn cutting business. Yep. Okay, so it's just kind of like a reframing, and the reason it made sense to them is they have so many partnerships. They have access to so many other home services businesses like painters and plumbers. And so if they put all that together and represent themselves as a property development organization, wow. And so they're in the middle of that right now. And the biggest problem they have is getting people to believe that they actually have the capability to do it, which is terrific because at least they're
Yeah.
leaning in.
Yep.
Sorry, a long-winded way of saying there is a way to get to an only,
For sure.
but you have to do the work. You have to do the work.
For sure. I always ask my guests kind of a standard set of 3 questions. I can't wait to hear your answers to these questions. So one is, you've written 7 books, and I'm sure that, and by the way, you and I both kind of abhor like academic written books. Like, that's that to me, there's not nearly as much value as, reading a founder's story or reading somebody who's actually done it. But is there a book that you've read, and if it doesn't have to be business. Actually, it does not have to be business, but a book that you've read that when you set it down, Roy, you said, okay, that's going into my lexicon. That's going to change the way I consult. That's going to change the way I build my own businesses. Is there one that you can recommend to the listeners?
What a great question. Oh, Guy, you will absolutely not expect this answer.
Sure.
Yes, there is a book that I was absolutely astounded over, and it's called, and you will understand this, it's called The Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. Now, some of us will remember the Grateful Dead as being the most successful rock band in history, or a touring rock band. There's nobody that has ever come closer to Jerry Garcia and his bandits running around the countryside playing rock music. The thing is that what people don't realize is Jerry Garcia, as a band member, was also an incredible business leader, and he actually created. And I mean, there you can still buy Grateful Dead T-shirts to this day, right?
Oh yeah.
But he was amazing in terms of a marketer. In fact, I discovered quite honestly later, after I was well into this only work, I stumbled over his expression that I just absolutely went, wow. And it's part of this book, which I'll explain in a minute. But he said, you don't want merely to be the best of the best. You want to be the only one who does what you do. And I went, Garcia even agrees with me. I got to be, and I'm serious. I didn't copy him. I had created this thing and then stumbled on it. Anyways, a guy, this writer, realized how quite unbelievably, incredibly genius this guy was. And he did a study on a Grateful Dead and what they did from a marketing point of view in a day when there wasn't social media, in a day where he understood that the way to keep loyalty is to give your existing customers the deals, not use new deals to attract new customers, which seems to be the sexy marketing of the day, right? So he figured this out. So it's a simple little book. I loved it because it is so practical and it is so credible because this is a guy, again, he's a practitioner. He's a musician that achieved business success. This isn't theoretical stuff. And it resonated with me just like you. It's like, oh my God, a kindred spirit. Only I didn't know it then. I was sitting in the back of a truck drinking beer, probably. So that is, and I would recommend, it's called The Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. You guys, go check it out. It's such a fun, incredible reading. You'll put it down and you'll go, oh my God.
I love that. We'll put that in the show notes. That sounds great. It's funny. I'll just have to share. So, of course, I've known about the Grateful Dead and listened to their music, but I've not seen a live show. I didn't get to see one before Jerry passed.
Yeah.
But I was able to recently see the Dead and Company, which is John Mayer, touring with them. And I came home. I went with a buddy. I came home from that concert. I walked in. I told my wife, I'm like, at once I was blind, but now I can see. Like, I get it. Like, it is such the vibe of the crowd and the whole thing, and their shanty town, the whole thing, like just I'm like, I get it now. And holy moly, you cannot appreciate what it is from the radio or from YouTube. You've got to be there. And it was soul moving.
It's like the definition of an experience. Like if you, from a business point of view, with your fans, can create that sort of vibe, then first of all, that's what sustainability is all about, Roger.
Yep.
That's what sustainability is all about. Yeah. Oh, that's a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. True. All right. So the last 2 questions, one, and this is not meant to be morbid at all, but it just kind of, I love it as a reflection for someone to reflect. If we fast forward to the end of your life and we're at your funeral and a loved one is reading your eulogy, but he or she is only allowed to use 3 words as a descriptor, the 3 separate words or whatever. They don't have to be in a phrase, but just 3 words. But they're only allowed 3 words to describe the life that Roy lived. What 3 words do you hope they choose to describe the way they experienced you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they will definitely use the word different. Different is something that they know what I'm about. They will also use the word audacious, because laterally over the last couple of decades, I've kind of like grown into that. I didn't call it that at first. And in fact, I didn't use the word until my 7th book. And I used it because it's not well used, and it connotes boldness, courageousness, risk-taking, etc. And they would use that. And the 3rd word I think they would use would be generous. I believe in sharing what I've learned and sharing the mistakes that I've made that hopefully will help others. I believe in family, helping my family.
Great. Yeah. Love it. That's obviously there's something behind that just let you up right there. Yeah.
So I hope that's what they do. If they don't, I'll come back and whack them on the side of the head.
I will haunt them. I will come back and haunt them. Roy, if you had it, this is the last point, and then I want to help people find out how they can find you.
Yeah.
But first, before we get there, if I were to give you a magic wand and you wave this magic wand tonight, and we wake up tomorrow and the world is different according to Roy in one major way, the whole world operates differently, it acts differently, people act differently, whatever it is. If you wave your magic wand and we wake up tomorrow, how is the world different according to you?
So it would be different in the way the people engage with one another and how people approach challenges. And I referred to it a bit earlier, and I had this little gimmick that always worked for me. It's called my Be Different lens. So whenever I'm presented with a problem or a challenge, whatever, I would always kind of look through my lens and ask the question, how can I do this differently in a way people care about? And so if I wave my magic wand, and by the way, I don't have those conversations with people today, right? So it's like a green field, but the problem is they're not coming. And so if I wave my wand, what I would see, and if I could listen, I would listen to people having conversations about how they will try to do things differently, how they will try and come up with a unique solution to a problem that nobody's thought of. And I would also see them not go to Google and gargle it. I call it gargling Google, because that's what people do, right? They try and figure out how other people have done something and they copy it. Well, you can't be different if you're copying all the time. So I would see people putting the textbook down, they would be putting Google down, and they would be starting to use the natural inherent ability for themselves and trusting it to think. And the reason that will work is if you know what people crave, Roger, you're way ahead of the curve, because then any solution to the craving is going to be unique, because people are doing that today. And so I would see and I would hear a lot of those conversations going, and I would go, yes. And I would take my glass of Johnny Walker Blue label and I'd just sip it and go, life was good.
I love it. Love it. Awesome. Roy, where can people find you, follow you, connect with you? How do they do that?
So I have a website. It's bedifferentorbedead.com.
Shocker. Shocker.
Shocker. So come and visit me. Okay. And I've tried to put as many helpful resources on there as I can. I blog literally every week. Roger, I've been blogging since 2009, since I wrote my first book. So there's lots of content, and it's new content, continually evolving, because I just find learning my own stuff is an evolution. It's never going to be over. And so you can think about it, if you will, as a draft. Everything about me is a draft, because it will change, because life changes, right? So there's that on there. Information on my books is about there. Thoughtful remarks is about there. So there's people who are wonderful enough to give me a commentary on how the work has affected them and so forth. It's on there. I have a podcast now. I'm just starting. So I'm a neophyte. It's called Audacious Moves to $1 Billion. So you can check that out on Spotify, whatever. And I've done, this will probably be about my 98th guesting appearance, Roger, on podcast. So I've really got to know a ton of people and appreciate it like you. And the last thing is I have a Gmail email address at roy.osing@gmail.com. And I'm really happy to have a one-on-one with people. You know, it's astounding. And this really makes my heart feel good. I get people emailing me saying, Roy, this is my draft only statement. What do you think? So we have a conversation about that. And they go away hopefully with some suggestions. And I go away thinking that I helped somebody. And that's made it a good day.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's we'll put all those in the show notes, your website and your Gmail address, so that people can connect with you and be part of your journey. That's what this is about, connecting other people. Well, I just want to tell you, one, this has been a ball of fun. I love your energy, and you are definitely, we talked before we went live, just, hey, let's have an authentic conversation. And you are one authentic dude, and I really appreciate that about you. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Oh, my pleasure, Roger. Look, you did a terrific job. I love the questions, love the engagement, love the experience. You're one of a kind, mate. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, thank you. You made my week. You made my week. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, thrivemoorebrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.